Some performances leave a mark so deep that the actor is never seen the same again. In this episode, we step into the quiet New York apartment where a brilliant talent and troubled soul met an end wrapped in pills, exhaustion, and lingering questions. The Heath Ledger case opens. This is Memento Mori.
Won't you spare me over another?
Welcome. And, with a case this public, this tragic, the temptation is always to find a simple answer, isn't it? A point of finger. But our mission today is a bit more nuanced.
It has to be.
Right. We're really looking at the complete anatomy of this modern tragedy. We're taking the comprehensive reports, the toxicology, the police findings, all the accounts from people close to him, and we're trying to extract the factual context.
Because it's not just about what happened, but why.
Exactly. We need to understand the extreme pressures of that level of artistry, the physiological reality of what chronic exhaustion does to a person, and crucially, the systemic reliance on prescription medication that really set the stage for this.
That context is just indispensable, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the medical facts are clear, but the story of how Heath Ledger arrived at that fatal moment it's a profound commentary on the cost of dedication.
Especially in industries that demand that absolute peak performance day in and day out.
And we're looking at a man who, by early 2008, was at the absolute pinnacle of his career. I mean, he was this charismatic, deeply talented Australian actor who had completely transcended that teen idol label from his early films.
Oh, completely. His ascent was marked by just this incredible commitment. He wasn't someone who took the easy roles.
No.
You look at Brokeback Mountain, which got him his first Oscar nomination, and he'd already established himself as someone willing to physically and emotionally transform.
He specialized in that complexity, that darkness.
He did. And leading up to January 22nd, 2008, that creative intensity reached a kind of fever pitch that, looking back, seems just physically and mentally unsustainable.
Let's unpack that right there.
Yeah.
Section 1, the apex and the pressure. Because you can't understand the last few months of his life without focusing on the one role that really defined him. The Joker in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. And the preparation for this wasn't just learning lines, was it? The sources we've seen describe it as a kind of total immersion, a psychological self-excavation.
That's the perfect way to put it. It was method immersion taken to an absolute extreme. To really become the Joker, this figure of pure, unmotivated chaos Ledger felt he had to understand that state of mind from the inside.
He had to live it, in a way.
In a way, yes. He'd always been an intense actor, but this was a deliberate choice to dive headfirst into the character's darkness and really risk his own mental equilibrium in the process.
And the most famous part of this whole process was the isolation, right? He locked himself in a hotel room.
He did, for about a month in a London hotel. And the purpose of that self-imposed isolation was to completely shut out external reality.
To get away from Heath Ledger.
Exactly. To eliminate distractions, the comforts of his own life, and just force himself to confront the unsettling, nihilistic core of this villain. And during that time, he kept those famous character diaries.
So what was in them? What do they look like?
Well, they weren't just notes on lines. They were these detailed documents, almost like scrapbooks of madness. They had the Joker's twisted sense of humor, his thoughts, potential origin stories.
And images, too, I read.
Yes, very disturbing images. Things from A Clockwork Orange, pictures of clowns, hyenas with their unnerving grins. It was a focused deep dive into pure psychological torment, a way to build the character from the inside out.
The psychological strain of that, of maintaining that level of immersion, pushing your own psyche to inhabit pure chaos for weeks and months on end. It just must have been immense.
It's the kind of work that doesn't just switch off when the director yells cut.
No. So what was the direct physical consequence of carrying that role around with him?
The single most direct consequence was profound: chronic insomnia. When you push your brain and your emotions to that edge, constantly running on high-intensity adrenaline and anxiety, your brain literally loses the ability to downshift, to rest.
You can't find the off switch.
It can't. And the source material is very clear on this. Ledger struggled severely with sleep after filming that role, and this was way beyond just normal fatigue. He publicly confessed to sometimes only getting about 2 hours of sleep a night.
2 hours.
2 hours. Because the effects of the character, the thought patterns, that manic energy, they were still just buzzing in his system.
2 hours of sleep. I mean, that is just physiologically unsustainable. For anyone, when you're that chronically sleep deprived, your body starts to break down.
Everything does. Your cognitive function deteriorates, your emotional regulation just collapses.
And the need for release becomes all-consuming.
It does, and this is where the whole tragedy really pivots. Because the chronic sleeplessness wasn't just a tough side effect of the job, it became the direct catalyst for his pharmacological dependency.
He needed help.
Desperately. In a high-pressure industry where the production schedules are absolutely unforgiving, you can't just take a month off to recover. Chronic sleeplessness demands a rapid solution.
You have to show up on set the next day.
You have to perform at an Oscar-level intensity on 2 hours of sleep. It's impossible. And that's where the coping mechanism shifts decisively toward chemical assistance. He started needing medication just to get basic rest, just to remain functional. The desire to simply shut down his own mind became paramount.
And crucially, the intense work didn't even stop after the dark night wrapped. That's a key detail, isn't it?
It's a critical detail. The pressure cycle was relentless. Immediately before his death, he was actively filming the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
With Terry Gilliam,
Yeah.
another very demanding
A
director.
very demanding production, so you have the residual effects of the Joker role, the severe insomnia still metabolizing in his system, and that's compounded by the long, demanding hours on a new film set.
And his personal life was also in turmoil.
Right. Sources indicate the emotional strain from his recent separation from Michelle Williams was also a major factor. All of these things came together and elevated his stress to a critical clinical point.
Which made him even more desperate for that pharmacological intervention.
Absolutely.
It just paints this picture of a man trying to outrun a nervous breakdown, and he's using the only tools that were readily available to him in that high-speed, high-demand world.
Prescription pills.
Exactly. So if we connect this to the broader industry, what does his situation really tell us about the industrial context of Hollywood?
I think it raises a really important question about systemic safety nets, or the lack thereof.
Right.
We're talking about an industry that celebrates and financially rewards actors for these methods that can actively dismantle their psychological health.
They praise the immersion, the transformation.
They do, and when actors are pushed to their physical and emotional limits, traveling constantly, working insane hours, maintaining a public persona, the system often fails to provide any kind of coordinated mental health or recovery support.
Instead, what does it offer?
It offers a quick route to relief. This reliance on powerful, controlled substances just to function or sleep becomes the accepted, standard operating procedure, a very, very dangerous one.
It's a culture that prioritizes the product, that immersive, transformative performance, over the well-being of the person who's delivering it.
Absolutely. And when you combine that pressure cooker environment with the accessibility of, let's say, sympathetic doctors who maybe want to keep a high-profile client working or are simply unaware of the other medications that client is juggling.
You create a situation where this polypharmacy, this use of multiple drugs, becomes almost inevitable.
It becomes inevitable. And Heath Ledger's struggle, sadly, represents that industrial shadow just perfectly.
That context of relentless pressure and this growing pharmacological dependence, it brings us, with heavy hearts, to Section 2, Discovery and the Initial Shock. We have to shift our focus to the precise timeline of January 22, 2008.
Right. The location was his rented fourth-floor apartment at 419 Broome Street in the SoHo neighborhood of New York. It was a Tuesday.
And as we've established, the atmosphere in that apartment was, well, one of increasing anxiety.
Yes. The escalating stress, the insomnia, the emotional toll, the separation. He had been struggling to sleep for some time, and his condition was known to the people around him.
So let's detail the discovery itself. It happened in the middle of the afternoon.
The time was around 3:30 p.m. The person who arrived at the apartment was Diana Wolausen. She was Ledger's massage therapist, and she was there for a scheduled appointment.
Okay.
She tried calling him on his cell from the street, got no answer. Then she went up to the apartment, buzzed the intercom, and was let in by the housekeeper. She called out for him, tried his bedroom door, but again, no answer.
So how did she get into the bedroom?
The housekeeper, who was also in the apartment, allowed her to enter the bedroom, and that's when she found him. He was lying face down in his bed, unclothed.
And she checked for a pulse.
She did, and she found no response. She was instantly confronted with this terrible scene. And crucially, the initial reports all indicate that prescription pill bottles were immediately visible on the nightstand near the bed.
A visual confirmation right there of his desperate reliance on medication.
Exactly. The fact that the medication was right there, front and center, it just signals the sheer extent of his dependency on these substances in those final days.
But this is where the sequence of events gets very confusing. And it's what attracted so much intense media scrutiny, the calls that were made immediately after the discovery.
Yes. This specific detail generated an immense amount of distraction during the initial investigation.
So what happened?
Upon checking Ledger's pulse and realizing the extreme severity of the situation, the therapist, Diana Wulozin, she was clearly overwhelmed and panicked.
Understandably.
And she did not immediately call 911, which is, of course, the standard protocol for an unresponsive person. Instead, her first call was to the actress Mary-Kate Olsen.
Mary-Kate Olsen, why her?
Sources indicate she was a friend of Ledger's. Wulozin called her twice, desperate and shocked, apparently seeking guidance on what to do.
And that decision resulted in a critical delay.
And what followed was even more irregular. Olsen, who was reportedly in California at the time, then attempted to dispatch her own private security guards to the SoHo apartment.
Before emergency services were contacted.
Before they were officially contacted, yes.
Okay, so let's get this straight. The sequence is discovery, check pulse, call a friend who is thousands of miles away. That friend then tries to send private security, and then finally 911 is called.
That's the sequence. And for any investigation, that sequence, friend, security, then emergency services, is highly problematic. It created unnecessary delays, and frankly, it fueled speculation, rumors of foul play, and later, a much more intense investigation to the source of the drugs, which focused initially on Olsen.
And when was the tragic official declaration finally made?
Police and paramedics arrived very quickly once 911 was finally called. Heath Ledger was officially pronounced dead at the scene at 3:36 p.m.
So close to when he was found.
Very close. The initial assessment, given the scene and the presence of the medications, pointed toward an overdose, but the precise cause that required the definitive word of the medical examiner.
It's just a striking lesson in how the human element, the shock and the confusion, can complicate an immediate tragedy. It provided narrative fodder for the media for months, even though the forensic science eventually became very clear.
It did. But we have to pivot away from the noise of that initial shock and focus on the science. Because the real cause of death wasn't found in the timeline of those phone calls. It was found in the complex chemistry of his system.
Which moves us into Section 3, the official investigation. This is where we break down the forensic reality. The New York Medical Examiner's Office, they initiated a comprehensive toxicology and forensic analysis. This was the central, objective part of the whole investigation.
And the toxicology report was absolutely critical. It was the only way to move past all the speculation and determine the precise chemical cause of death. After a thorough analysis, the report was finally released on February 6, 2008.
And what was the definitive finding?
The official ruling was unequivocal. It was, and I'm quoting here, accidental acute poisoning caused by the combined effects of multiple drugs.
Accidental.
That was the key determination from the medical examiner's office. It was fundamentally a case of lethal pharmacological synergy.
Okay, let's delve deep into this lethal cocktail. For you, our listener, understanding these specific substances and why they interact so violently is essential to grasping the tragedy. The report listed 6 specific drugs. Can we categorize them and explain their function?
Absolutely. We need to go beyond just listing the names and really understand the therapeutic intent behind each drug, because that's what ultimately illustrates why this was an accident. The combination shows a man desperately trying to quell pain, anxiety, and most crucially, to achieve sleep.
So what were the categories?
The 6 substances fell into 3 major pharmacological classes. First, we have the strong narcotic painkillers, the opioids. Number 1 was oxycodone. It's a powerful semi-synthetic opioid used for moderate to severe pain relief, and it carries very heavy sedative effects. Number 2 was hydrocodone, another potent opioid analgesic, structurally similar to codeine, also highly sedative.
So 2 strong depressant pain medications right off the bat. If he wasn't suffering from some kind of acute physical pain, these were likely being used, at least in part, for their sedative properties.
That's a very fair assumption. The presence of 2 different opioids, even if they were taken at their prescribed therapeutic doses, immediately starts compounding the depressant effect on the central nervous system.
Okay, so that's the first category. What was the second?
The second class found were the anti-anxiety medications and sedatives, specifically the benzodiazepines.
Like Valium and Xanax.
Precisely. Number 3 was diazepam, which is the generic name for Valium. It's a fast-acting, long half-life benzodiazepine prescribed for anxiety disorders. It's a very powerful CNS depressant. And number 4 was alprazolam, or Xanax, another widely used fast-acting benzodiazepine, typically for panic disorders and acute anxiety.
Wow. So now we have 2 more CNS depressants, both major tranquilizers used to calm the brain and the body. The combined effect of just those 4 substances, the 2 opioids and the 2 benzos, that already sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is a critical red flag. In toxicology, the combination of opioids and benzodiazepines is often called the double depressant threat. It's one of the deadliest combinations in drug overdose deaths because they don't just add their effects, they multiply them.
Okay, so what was the third and final class of drugs?
The third class contained the sleep-specific aids. Number 5 was temazepam. This is a hypnotic drug, a sleep-inducing agent designed specifically and exclusively for treating severe insomnia.
And number 6?
And number 6 is perhaps the most telling inclusion of all, doxylamine.
What's that?
It's an over-the-counter antihistamine. It's the active ingredient in non-prescription sleep aids like Unisom. It's often used by people to try and boost the sedative effects of their other medications.
Wow. So if temazepam, the prescribed hypnotic sleep aid, wasn't enough, he was also resorting to an over-the-counter booster, the doxylamine. That just speaks volumes about the sheer desperation to achieve sleep when 5 other prescribed potent medications were failing to do the job.
It truly shows the complete failure of his pharmacological regimen. I mean, think about it. He had 2 narcotics, 2 major tranquilizers, a prescription sleep drug, and he still felt the need to add an OTC medication on top of it all. The sheer redundancy and the danger in that combination are just staggering.
So let's focus on the mechanism of fatality. You mentioned synergistic depression. For everyone listening, how does combining all these CNS depressants actually result in accidental acute poisoning? What physically happens?
Think of your central nervous system, the CNS, as your body's master control panel. Both opioids and benzodiazepines are designed to depress or slow down activity in the CNS.
That's their job.
That's their job. They calm anxiety, they dull pain, and crucially, they slow your breathing and your heart rate. When these classes are combined, their effect becomes synergistic, which means 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It equals 3 or 4.
They amplify each other.
Exactly. And the key biological function that's being suppressed is the brainstem's automatic, unconscious drive to breathe.
Yeah.
Benzodiazepines reduce the brain's alertness and its ability to respond to high carbon dioxide levels in the blood, while opioids directly suppress the respiratory drive itself. So when both are present, the control center for breathing essentially goes dormant.
So you would have just...
He would have simply drifted into sleep, and then, due to the complete suppression of his respiratory system, quietly stopped breathing without ever waking up. That is the very definition of the medical examiner's ruling, an accidental acute poisoning.
That is a terrifying but very necessary explanation of the mechanics.
Hmm.
So now we have to return to that crucial distinction. Why was this ruled accidental and not suicide? Given the sheer danger of that mix, it's a question a lot of people had.
And it's a critical one. The ruling is based on intent, or rather, the lack of it. The medical examiner found absolutely no evidence to suggest that Heath Ledger intended to die.
There was no suicide note.
No note. And his life trajectory suggested active planning for the future. He was in the middle of filming a movie, he was making calls, he was planning future roles. The accidental ruling means he did not intentionally take that combination to end his life. The tragedy was a gross miscalculation of the medication's combined potency.
He was managing symptoms, not planning for finality.
Precisely. Which means the death was the direct result of the dangerous practice of doctor shopping, mixing therapeutic or near therapeutic doses acquired from multiple different sources.
And none of those doctors knew the full picture.
That is the tragic conclusion. He was desperately trying to overcome his severe chronic insomnia by accumulating prescriptions from different doctors, a pain specialist in one city, a psychiatrist in another, a general practitioner, and none of them had a complete picture of the full chemical load he was carrying.
It was an accident rooted in severe desperation and fragmented medical oversight.
And a system of high-pressure work and fragmented care that created the perfect conditions for this lethal mistake to happen.
This detailed forensic breakdown really closes the door on the mystery, but it opens up this profound cultural critique. And that moves us into section 4, aftermath, controversy, and lasting critique.
Right. And despite the absolute clarity of the toxicology report, the public imagination still sought alternative explanations. So it's necessary to briefly address and definitively dismiss the main theories that circulated.
The most persistent one was the suicide theory, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The one that tied his death directly to the psychological strain of playing the Joker.
That was the narrative that took hold almost immediately, that the intense darkness of the role destroyed him. But all the evidence we have contradicts this.
As we've said, no.
No note. Friends and family were adamant that he was making future plans. While the Joker preparation certainly drove his physical exhaustion and that dependency cycle, the medical evidence is clear. The death was accidental. The intensity of the art drove the dependency. The dependency caused the death.
And the less persistent, but still present, theory of murder or foul play.
That theory never gained any solid foundation whatsoever. The scene was entirely consistent with an accidental drug overdose in isolation, and the forensic investigations found no evidence to suggest another person was involved in any malicious way. The case was closed based purely on pharmacological interaction.
Okay, so let's turn to that secondary controversy that really plagued the initial investigation, the involvement of Mary-Kate Olsen because of that delayed phone call.
Yes. That sequence of events, while ultimately a distraction from the main forensic facts, did have legal repercussions. Because the substances involved were controlled prescription drugs, the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, became involved shortly after the New York police concluded their initial phase.
And why did the DEA specifically target Olsen for questioning?
Well, given that the massage therapist called her immediately and before 9/11, investigators wanted to determine if Olsen might have been aware of Ledger's drug use, or, more crucially, if she might have been the source of some of the controlled substances found in his system. They were trying to trace the provenance of those 6 drugs.
And what was the resolution of that very high-profile inquiry?
It generated a huge amount of media coverage, mainly because Olsen legally refused to be interviewed by authorities. She invoked her right to remain silent, which she was legally entitled to do.
And the investigation?
The investigation ultimately concluded without finding any evidence of illegal activity or any connection to the drug source on her part. The DEA ultimately confirmed that the drugs in Ledger's system were legally prescribed, even if they were acquired from multiple different sources.
So that controversy essentially dissolved, and it just confirmed that the tragedy was entirely internal, an accidental interaction of legally obtained prescriptions, all driven by this extreme duress.
Exactly. The noise surrounding the investigation was a distraction from the real story, which is the systemic failure. And we have to remember, his passing happened at the absolute peak of his professional life.
6 months later, The Dark Knight was released, and the film became this massive cultural phenomenon, and his Joker performance was universally acclaimed. It earned him the posthumous Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
And that award, while it was a beautiful tribute to his undeniable genius, it also inextricably linked that transformative performance to the immense fatal cost of creating it. It cemented his place in film history while simultaneously serving as this constant tragic reminder of the price of extreme immersion.
Which brings us to the most vital part of this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
The critique of Hollywood culture. I mean, Ledger's death was an unavoidable wake-up call for the industry about some of its most dangerous practices.
It had to be. It drew immediate and necessary attention to that dangerous synergy between career pressure and medication reliance. We're talking about an industry where actors face these impossible demands: unpredictable schedules, chronic lack of sleep from travel, and long shifts, intense emotional stress from roles.
And the exhaustion that comes from that is treated not as a medical crisis, but as a logistical hurdle.
Exactly, a hurdle to be overcome chemically.
And that chemical solution is facilitated by what we keep coming back to, this hazard of doctor shopping.
Yeah.
The sources really highlight this as a core industry-wide issue.
It's the central systemic flaw that this case exposed. Doctor shopping is the practice of consulting multiple physicians to get prescriptions for the same or interacting medications without disclosing the full regimen to any single one of them.
And for high-profile people who are constantly traveling and working under duress, it's already pretty easy for that to happen. Coordinated medical records just get ignored.
It's logistically difficult, and there's a pressure to get a quick fix, and you have to ask, why would doctors contribute to this? Well, some are genuinely unaware of other prescriptions, but others, practicing in areas with a lot of celebrity clientele, they may feel pressure to provide immediate relief to keep a powerful client satisfied or functional on a demanding schedule. So they provide that quick pharmacological fix for symptoms of stress and exhaustion, not realizing the patient is already getting similar fixes elsewhere.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
Ledger's case tragically exemplified the ultimate lethal hazard of that practice. Acquiring multiple highly potent CNS depressants all at the same time, ensuring no single medical professional knew the full chemical composition he was actually using.
It's the stark realization that the industry system was designed for efficiency and performance, not for safety. Ledger wasn't a reckless addict looking for an escape. He was a desperate artist looking for sleep.
That is the key insight for our listener today. His death symbolized the immense psychological and physical toll that intense artistry can take. When the boundaries between the character and the self start to erode and the external pressures are maximal, the inevitable breakdown is met with easily accessible, powerful drugs.
And in that environment, the potential for an accidental overdose, a fatal attempt to self-medicate for chronic fatigue, it just becomes drastically amplified. So what does this all mean when we synthesize the facts, the context, and the cultural critique? Where do we land in our outro?
I think we land on the conclusion that this story is not a cold case. It's not a simple cautionary tale of excess. It is the anatomy of a disaster, one that's rooted in the high-stakes world of artistry, compounded by chronic exhaustion, and finalized by the fatal interaction of sophisticated pharmacology.
Heath Ledger remains a potent symbol of the immense psychological costs of dedication in these high-pressure creative fields.
He does. The official reports gave us the physical cause, respiratory failure from polypharmacy, but the context gave us the cultural failure that enabled it to happen.
And for you, the listener, the key takeaway is that catastrophic intersection of severe, untreated chronic stress and the practice of polypharmacy. The lesson extends far beyond Hollywood. Anyone under immense pressure who is relying on multiple doctors for immediate relief of symptoms like anxiety or insomnia faces this inherent danger. It is a terrifying, factual reminder that even legally obtained prescriptions, when they are combined and taken without coordinated oversight, can become a lethal cocktail.
And we really need to understand that concept of CNS synergistic depression. When you combine substances that all slow down your automatic functions, like the 2 opioids, the 2 benzodiazepines, and the sleep aids found in Ledger's system, you create an environment where the most essential function, breathing, can simply cease without your body ever offering a warning. That risk has to be acknowledged every time someone is prescribed multiple depressants.
Our final thought for you, the learner, is one of reflection on the cost of art itself. We universally celebrate artists who push themselves to the brink, who suffer for their art, to give us performances as transformative as Ledger's Joker. We applaud that dedication.
We do.
But where is the line drawn between professional dedication, that commitment to immersion and self-destruction, and what is the hidden societal cost when we place the expectation of such intense, self-sacrificing immersion on our greatest creative talents?
And you have to reflect on the fact that he was seeking something so normal, just the ability to sleep. And that very basic human quest led to this devastating conclusion. The pressure to deliver, compounded by constant fatigue and the accessibility of pharmacological relief, created a cycle that he just could not break free from.
Thank you for listening. To ensure you don't miss the next file of the Memento Mori collection, please like this video and subscribe. Until we meet again in the next Art Story.